Ladies and gentlemen, welcome in to No Huddle Rodeo, the first edition of 2026. And as you may or may not know, I would assume you know if you are watching this, the Pro Rodeo calendar, we have the NFR, it's December, we take a little lull, we take a beat, and then all of a sudden it feels like we are right back into it. And that's kind of the mode we're in right now, is we are right back into everything in Pro Rodeo. Congrats to the 2025 World Champions, but it is 2026 on the calendar. It is 2026 in the Pro Rodeo season, and things start very, very fast. We are already through Odessa, through the Sandhills Stock Show and Rodeo. Our first playoff series rodeo completed over the weekend. We are in the heart of Denver, of the National Western. That finishes up this weekend. Beginning on Thursday, the Texas Swing, the Fort Worth Stock Show and Rodeo, a $25,000 prize waiting for the winner at the end of that rodeo in a few weeks. That begins on Thursday of this week. And so, like I said, after that, San Antonio, Texas Swing in full swing, everything's starting to take shape, and it feels very, very early, obviously, to talk standings and all of that type of stuff. But I want to remind everyone out of the gate this year in 2026, after the Texas Swing, after San Angelo, in April, we will already have a top 15, of course, but among that top 15, pretty frequently, traditionally, of that top 15 after San Angelo, about 65 to 70% of them will make the NFR, will make up your NFR field. So there's always great summer stories and people who come from outside of the top 15 who are 30 and 35th or whatever it may be at the beginning of the summer who make a run, sometimes even win the world that way. But after all of this money from these big rodeos, we will have a very good idea what is going on, which is why starting fast is so important. And so with the theme of starting fast, already looking toward the end of the year in a lot of ways, again, I know that sounds crazy, but kind of in that vein, we are going to touch on, in this episode of No Huddle Rodeo, just some of the storylines that we had at the beginning of the year and just follow up on them. If you are not following us on Instagram, we did, over the course of the last couple of weeks, just storylines to watch in professional rodeo. 5 things per event that just I have my eye on and why. A lot of it has to do with how world champions follow things up, new pairs in the team roping, new NFR qualifiers emerging, trends to think about, stats to think about, all that type of stuff. And people have responded very well to them. People seem to really like them. I am very proud of them. They are part of a little bit of a new look we have going on there, and I think it works really, really well. So all of that to say, I'm going to connect at least our first 3 topics to things that I had my eye on going in. And of those things, they are, can Colten, Fritzlan, and Boudreaux Campbell return to the NFR in the bull riding? That was one of them. What type of bareback rider would Wacey Schalla prove to be in 2026? Could Stetson Wright win his Triple Crown? And all of those things in some way, shape, or form in Odessa and Denver became storylines for the year, not just hypothetical storylines like they were a couple weeks ago. So, with that being said, let's go to Colten, Fritzlan, and Boudreaux Campbell. So, as a refresher, 2 guys who have primarily ridden in the PBR and come back, and now it really feels like there's a lot more back and forth between PBR and PRCA guys, or guys who try the PBR, or on the flip side, PBR guys who try pro rodeoing for a couple of years, and then really decide what they want to do at 26, 27, 28 years old. But even last year, for example, we saw Hudson Bolton ride a full schedule in both PBR and PRCA. Rookie of the year in the PBR, almost the rookie of the year in the PRCA, made the NFR. Quinn Anderson rode in PBR teams, rode a full schedule in the PRCA. Josh Frost, the year he won the world title, he was a member of the Oklahoma Wildcatters. Trey Holston joining PBR teams, but will still ride in some pro rodeo events. Clayton Sellers goes over to PBR, rides in teams a little bit, comes back, makes the 2024 NFR, now is back in pro rodeo full time. So Colten Fritzlan, 2020 NFR average champion. Boudreaux Campbell, 5 straight NFRs from 2017 to 2021. All indications point to both of them trying to make the national finals rodeos this year, which would really strengthen the field if they prove to make it. And they both got off to good starts to that effect. Boudreaux Campbell wins the Sandhills Stock Show and Rodeo. 90 points on Powder River Sour Patch. Returns in style. Gets a big check. Gets a playoff series win. The first playoff series rodeo of the year. He wins it in his return to full-time pro rodeo. Colten Fritzlan, on the other hand, he was pro rodeoing most of 2025. He finished 21st. Now this year, finishes second at the Ruffy Top Gun event in Fallon on New Year's Eve. Then also 2 for 2 in Denver. He's moving on there. Good start at the National Western. And like I said, those guys would really strengthen the bull riding field of the National Finals Rodeo, especially when you pair them with Stetson Wright, Kai Hamilton, Wacey Schalla, and this rookie class, a lot of them I mentioned from the previous year. Hudson Bolton, Quinn Anderson, to name a few, but Bryce Jensen, he was the rookie of the year. Luke Mackey, he rode 6 of 10, at the National Finals Rodeo. He was terrific. So both of those guys back in pro rodeo full-time, off to really, really good starts. Fritzlan 4 for 5 on the year. Boudreaux Campbell closer to 50% on the year, but has that 90-point ride in Odessa. Also in Odessa, Wacey Schalla, 89 points on Butler and Sons Guitar Town. He won a Cinch World's Toughest the weekend before. He wins in Odessa. Those two rodeos combined to pay him about $10,000. And so Wacey Schalla, who entered the NFR, with everybody talking about him as a bull rider, because he was the number 1 ranked bull rider and made $352,000 in the regular season. But in the bareback riding, if you were paying attention during the summer run, you saw him win over a dozen rodeos. You saw him win the Rough Rider Cup. You saw him compete incredibly well in the bareback riding. Win over $125,000 for the summer run. Make the NFR. Entered the NFR number 13. And then at that National Finals Rodeo, move all the way up to number 5 in the world when it's all said and done. Be in the mix in the average. Just really showed everybody who he was as a bareback rider. And now, based on those NFRs, based on how he started this season, Wacey Schalla, I think this year, especially if he wins a Texas Swing Rodeo, this year, he will be considered on equal footing bull rider, bareback rider, which was not really the case last year. Everyone thought of him as a bull rider who happens to ride bareback horses, but this year, 87.5, 89 points on his first 2 bareback riding horses. That was a big story for me. What would Wacey Schalla do in the bareback riding, and what would he do with really a full season in the bareback riding? Because from January to May last year, he really got on only like 20 or 25 horses. I don't know the exact number. I should have looked it up. But it was like 20 horses before the summer run and 50 or so during the summer run. So just different schedule. He was not focused on his bareback riding, but then got really, really hot in the bareback. Carried it all the way to the National Finals Rodeo, has carried it into January. So I'm really curious to see Wacey Schalla, bareback riding world champion contender, bull riding world champion contender, all-around contender. I mean, a full season of bareback riding with just as good of an NFR could be the difference of winning that all-around title. Could be what knocks Stetson Wright off of that perch. So those are 2 things from the jump. Fritzlan and Campbell, Wacey Schalla. Obviously, Campbell, Wacey, they win in Odessa. First playoff rodeo. So before we get to Stetson Wright, which is where we're going next, let's just run through what did happen in Odessa. Bray Arms in the steer wrestling, 8.4 seconds on 2. Dustin Egaskiza and JC Flake win the team roping, 8.3 on 2. That was really interesting because a lot of new pairs in the mix. Egaskiza and Flake roped together down the stretch last year. Didn't rope together at the NFR because Flake didn't make it. But they're together for a full season now. Tanner Tomlinson and Colby Payne, they're a new pair. They were 3-5 to win a round. Tyler Tryon and Levi Lord, Egaskiza's old partner. teaming up with one of the best young guns in the game, Tyler Tryon. They were third in the average. So a lot of things we found out in Odessa in the team roping, and a lot of new pairs proving that they will be around as NFR qualifiers no matter who they rope with. Saddle bronc riding, Q McWhorter, your champion, 87 points on Butler and Sons' Mistaken Identity. Rusty Wright, who is off to a great start, top 3 in the world. He was 86.5 points. He was number 2 in Odessa. He also won a Cinch World's Toughest in Des Moines, just like Wacey Schalla did. He was 89 points there a couple weeks ago. Kincaid Henry, the terrific NFR, carries that into Odessa, 17-7 on 2. He wins the average by more than a second. And then Julie Plurd in the barrel racing wins the NFR average after getting the late call to make it there. 14.38 seconds to win in Odessa. She was also 15 flat and 15.06 on her barrel racing runs in Denver. So she is leading round 1, second in round 2 there. 2 of the fastest 3 runs at the National Western have gone to Julie Plurd. So we will use that at the National Western to transition into Stetson Wright. Because if you remember, obviously Stetson Wright got very, very close, controversially did not win the Triple Crown, added an all-around, added a bull riding title, got his world championship total to 10. If you remember, last year in Denver was really when he returned from that year-plus long layoff for that hamstring injury. And it looked good in the bull riding. He started great in the bull riding. I think he rode his first 10 in the bull riding. But in the saddle bronc riding, an event that is harder on your hamstring, constant motion that you have to make there, obviously, he struggled. 2 rides in the 70s at the National Western. It took him a little bit to get going in the bronc riding. I say all of that because he entered the NFR number 12, finished number 3, could have and maybe should have won the average and the world title, but was in the mix in the saddle bronc riding without really a great regular season. Now, on his first 2 horses in Denver this year, not in the 70s, 83 points, 86 points, and 86 points leads round 2. 83 points is getting a check in round 1. He is already in position to advance to the semifinals, and he looks a lot more like the Stetson Wright we saw in 2023 in Denver as opposed to 2025 when he went 90 and in the short round and won the bronc riding there. And so what would Stetson Wright be like if he had even an average Texas swing in the bronc riding? That could set him up for a Triple Crown. And that obviously, I don't need to remind you the storyline around Stetson Wright this year, specifically in the bronc riding, because he's done it more recently in the bulls, in the all-around. It is now, can he do it in the bronc riding in the same year and win that Triple Crown that, again, he maybe, probably, might have, could have, should have won in 2025. We all know the story. I am not going to rehash it. We have flipped the calendar to 2026. Lastly, before we go, Montana Circuit Finals Rodeo. Got to point out some of the dominance there from some NFR qualifiers. Really cool rodeo. Kind of a small building with a really full crowd there in Great Falls, and just some stuff I want to touch on before we go that was too good not to discuss. Ty Erickson, 15.2 seconds on 3, wins the steer wrestling for the 7th time at the Montana Circuit Finals. Sam Peterson finishes number 2 in the world in 2025. He goes back to the Montana Circuit Finals, doesn't get a check on his first horse, follows it up with 90 and 86.5 points to win the average by 4.5 points. The Pro Rodeo tracking on ProRodeo.com goes back to 2015. Sam Peterson's 90-point ride is the first one at the Montana Circuit Finals Rodeo since at least 2015. And lastly, Sage Newman, a clean sweep, over $13,000, 3 straight rides of 85.5 or better, finishes with rides of 88 or 89 points. All of that brings his aggregate total to 262.5 points on 3. We go back to 2015. That is the most at the Montana Circuit Finals by over 7 points in the last decade in terms of aggregate score. He wins with that sweep by 16.5 points, 262.5 on 3, wins over $13,000. Sage Newman leaves as the winningest cowboy at the Montana Circuit Finals in 2026. So, that is the lay of the land. That is some stories to watch. That is post-Odessa into Denver, into Fort Worth. Obviously, we will be here all year long on No Huddle Rodeo. We will be on YouTube all year long. We will be across all of your social platforms. So if you liked the video, please like it on YouTube to help spread the word. Subscribe, comment, get these on your page as soon as possible because we will be here every single week the rest of the way. And also once we get into summer, multiple times a week the rest of the way. But until then, we'll be back next week to discuss all things Fort Worth, all things with champions decided at the National Western in Denver. It is on. The Pro Rodeo season is on, and we will be here with you, like I said, every step of the way on No Huddle Rodeo on US Cowboy. So until next week, thank you for joining us. Stay tuned here for more PBR content. This week, we do PBR and PRCA, remember, but we will see you here for more No Huddle Rodeo. We will see you here for some PBR recaps, and we will see you here next week at this time to recap the National Western Stock Show and Rodeo and the first couple brackets in Fort Worth. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you then.